All right, so creating a picture book for the first time can be daunting, and that's why we made Children's Book Pro. From our years of professional experience creating children's books to help lead you through the process that you are never unsure of what you need to be doing next. When you finish the course, you'll have a book dummy that you can add to your portfolio, and you'll also have 3 finished illustrations that can also be a part of your portfolio and get you going on this path towards becoming a pro illustrator. Don't just listen to me, though. I want you to hear it from people who have actually taken the course. Here's what they've said. Tammy says, no matter what stage you're in, whether a beginning illustrator or you have a few books already illustrated, this class is extremely useful. Malka says, this was a childhood dream come true. I was going over each lesson again and again. That's how much information has been stuffed into each class, enough for a lifetime. And Yolanda says, this course turned out to be one of the best investments I've made to improve my visual storytelling skills. It helped me to formulate a tangible plan to becoming the artist that I would like to be one day. Okay, so this class is running from September to November this fall. There's going to be a weekly Zoom meeting with the instructors. You can ask whatever question you want. And we also are going to set up a unique Discord community just for this next cohort of people who are taking the class. If you want to see a preview of this, you could sign up and also get a notification for when the course launches in August by visiting childrensbookpro.com. Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry. And all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all taught illustration at university art schools. Together, we've published about 75 books, children's books, and we've worked for just about every major publication in the business.
That is correct. Each week we come at you guys with different topics in illustration, many times asked by our trusty listeners. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we argue, but each time you're going to learn something brand spanking new.
Great. Hey guys, I wanted to ask you something I've been thinking about, and I've never really gotten your opinion on this before we get into today's topic. And the first thing is this.
Clown school is too expensive, Jake.
No.
Oh.
How come? How come sports fans get a pass as not being childish or being a kid at heart if they're way into sports as an adult? But oftentimes, if you're reading comics or you're way into Star Wars or Marvel or Lord of the Rings, you're kind of seen as like a nerd or as like, oh, that's kid stuff. The way I see it is a child is exposed to, let's say, we'll say a Dodgers family, a Dodgers fan. You know, there's like people who love the Dodgers. They have a kid. They teach them, here's baseball. Here's what the Dodgers do. Here's the players. They get them a jersey. They get the pennants. They hang the pennants on their walls. And they grow up, you know, just loving baseball and going to the games and having their favorite baseball baseball players. And then when they're adult,
revealing.
Yeah, when they're adults, yeah, you know, and they attend the the competition for best baseball team, World Series. That's what it's called.
Wow.
And you know that contest they have once a year. Anyways, and when you see a guy who his office has Dodgers memorabilia, he's got the signed baseball on the mantle. He's got, you know, his jersey from college, you know, framed. He's or high school or whatever. He coaches Little League, right? Mm-hmm. Like everyone's all, oh yeah, cool, normal, well-adjusted adult. But I feel like the guy who's got a signed, you know, Darth Vader helmet by the actor who plays Darth Vader on his wall. He's got Star Wars memorabilia everywhere. He's got, you know, his cosplay of a sand, you know, of Luke Skywalker or sand person or whatever. Mm-hmm. You know, he's got his lightsaber. He's got all the fan stuff all over. He's seen as like a fanatic, right? Am I getting that wrong? I know our culture's changing a little bit and that it's like acceptable, but let's say you run a D&D campaign for kids now, and you're like, you like, or with your buddies, and you do D&D every Friday night. How is that different from like a fantasy football or fantasy baseball?
It makes no sense. It's only
It's
socially
not different,
accepted thing. I mean, I deal with that a lot with skateboarding and say skateboarding versus road bikes. Road bikes are somehow seen as almost like the equivalent of a sports car in a weird way. And you see the guys riding, they look like they're in the Tour de France, no matter what their ability level is.
Right. Or their weight or body style.
Right. All of it. And they and it's totally fine. Like, it's not weird to see a bunch of grown men, women, that are very serious about cycling and, doing that. Same group of age range, the guys at the skate park are seen as like, Peter Pan syndrome. Can't grow up. I don't understand what the difference is.
Have you also noticed that road riders are jerks by just in general?
Oh, they're
very arrogant.
So Will Terry at SVSLearn.com.
I'm just gonna say they're very.
No. This
arrogant.
is coming from.
This is
coming from a guy who mountain bikes.
Well, but
here's the thing. I know personally several road riders, and they're all super cool. They're nice guys.
Yeah, it's the same thing as skiers saying snowboarders are that way. That's a gross generalization.
It is a gross generalization. Forget I said it, but back to your original thing.
It's accurate.
Your original thing,
jerks.
Jake. I agree that sports is way more acceptable in the adult circles than I would ever have predicted. It's like, I mean, it's just, but there are people who just don't like them. And like, when I met Lily, I could tell she was pinging me for like, am I going to have to suffer through a sports fan? Like it would be amazing if you weren't. And what's funny is I came off of sports about a decade ago, where I kind of was getting bored with football anyway. And then when politics entered, I was just like, I don't need it anymore. Once politics entered sports, but then also it just didn't fit in with my lifestyle that much. And I was able to tease her and say, well, I don't watch sports a lot. I just do the NFL Sunday ticket all day on Sunday, and so that's all I do. And she's like going, really? Oh, okay. She's trying.
Thought I had a good one here.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't do any sports. She's like, oh my gosh.
Here's the thing is, and I got nothing against sports. I hope I'm not coming across that way. I actually wish I was more into baseball than I am. I love the idea of baseball. I watched that entire Ken Burns like 13 episode, 13 parts. Each part was like 2 or 3 hours long. I watched the whole thing on baseball, loved every minute of it, ate it up. And I think I like the whole idea behind it. It's just like sitting down and watching a game, that I've got other things to do with my time, I think. And again, even then I'm like, my son's like, dude, we should get into a sport, Dad. We should watch a baseball game. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. But then there is a commitment there if you're a sports fan, because that is how many hours a week, or how many hours a month. And in the same breath, I want to say you got to have downtime and you got to have an escape from the other stuff. I already have my downtime and escapes, and do I have room in my life for that? Because I wasn't raised a sports fan. How do I start fitting it in?
It's too much commitment, in my opinion. And then there's too much disappointment. One team wins, that means the other how many 27 teams.
Do you know what I find true is that the people that are the most diehard sports fans, they have a 9 to 5, number one, and they really have a ton of free time, to devote to it. Whereas entrepreneurs or artists, entrepreneurs, we never feel like we have enough time. You know, we're always
There's always one other
There's
thing
that
you gotta
component,
do.
but I my wife says, and it has an interesting theory about dudes. I mean, I think dudes are more into sports. I know there are women that are into it as well, but she says guys just like to exchange bits of information. They're not actually talking; they're just exchanging facts.
That's a really good observation.
And it gets uncomfortable if they talk about, real things. So sports gives you the perfect opportunity for an unlimited amount of that kind of fact. Like,
there's no
this
end
guy's,
to it.
his average is down from what it was last year. It's going to be up from what it is going to be next year because he hired this swing coach and that guy's better than this. All the people even talking about is LeBron James better than Michael Jordan. What an irrelevant conversation. And then there's just, you follow that thread, it's thousands of replies deep.
Mm-hmm. You brought up another good point too, and that's mood. Like a friend of mine invited me and my son to go with him and his son to a college football game. ASU Sun Devils, they're playing Washington. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. Let's do it. Let's spend the afternoon. Lee's dog. Your puppy's so cute. Anyway, so we go there. You walk into a stadium. Walking into the stadium is like its own feeling. Like I'm going to a place. There's excitement. There's like this electricity in the air. There's anticipation. There's already the rivalry starting to happen when you bump into the people wearing the other color. It's feeding these base instincts, right? And then the whole lead up to the game, the players come on the field. It's all this ramp up, and then the game starts. And I got so invested in that game, and the Sun Devils did absolutely terrible. It actually affected my mood. I was like, what? They dropped another pass. I can't believe it. Who is even this guy? I never cared about football, or Sun Devils up to that point, other than passing. And here I am, like
Rooting.
just in a bad mood, right? And and that made me realize too, like the lows are really low in sports, but man, the highs are so stinking high. And I don't think you get the kind of highs that you get in sports in other forms of entertainment.
I agree. I love watching MMA. I know Tommy, who's Bobby Chu? Isn't he an MMA fan too? Mm-hmm. So, and there have been times where I've been way into football, way into basketball, and way into baseball. I think it's important to be able to appreciate those things so that when you see little TikToks of some plays and stuff, you can just really identify with it.
Yeah. I also love sports movies.
Yeah.
I love baseball movies. It's like the idea of it is really good. It's just the execution of like being a fan is really hard.
That movie that just came out. I don't know if you guys seen it, The American Underdog, Kurt Warner story.
Oh, right. That's on my list.
Amazing.
It's in my queue.
I don't know who that is.
Okay. We ended up watching Miracle, the 80s hockey or the 90s hockey
That's
movie.
amazing too. I lived that, by the way.
It was.
You were on the team?
No.
No, you were on the team. That's amazing.
I lived through that moment, and no spoilers, but if you haven't seen the movie, like me and my dad were watching anyway, just saying.
Yeah, it was one of the, it's a high. It's a serious high. You rarely get a high that high at the movies, I think. Sometimes you get it reading a book. Yeah. I've read books where books are amazing sometimes where you just like, it can get you.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just my little rant is you can be a fan of nerdy, geeky things, fringe things, and it's just as legitimate as being a Dodgers fan. So there you go. Okay.
Long way around on that one. But
topic of the day is a deep dive on 1,000 True Fans. We got this message from Eric, the garbage guy. He says, "Hey guys, I've listened to every minute of the podcast up to June 2021, even the copyright and NFT episodes." He said that like those are your worst episodes, and I even listened to those ones. Sorry we made them. Sometimes we got to give you guys your vegetables,
That's right.
That's
All right. Jake has mentioned 1,000 True Fans, but I feel you guys need a deeper dive into the concept. It's easily a full episode for you guys taking a look at Kevin Kelly's popular article and amplified by Seth Godin's thoughts. Even if most of us artists never land a children's book deal, if we start by delighting 10 people we know using new platforms or presenting and selling art, we start the road to 1,000 True Fans. Thanks, guys. Keep it up. If you haven't been on what I want to say is like creative entrepreneurial internet, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, if you haven't found those accounts that talk about being a creative sort of entrepreneurial type person, then if you have been on there, there's no chance you haven't been exposed to this idea of the 1,000 True Fans. Right. It's an idea that came out in 2008 from a blog post, or maybe it was an essay by Kevin Kelly. He was the original editor-in-chief of Wired magazine. And he has this, he's a prolific writer. He has this pretty influential blog. And one of these ideas that he came up with, or that he sort of outlined, was the idea of 1,000 True Fans. What's your guys' understanding of that principle or that concept, 1,000 True Fans?
In a nutshell, if you can generate 1,000 True Fans, defined as 1,000 people that will essentially buy anything that you release, then if you are able to sell them roughly $100 per year, then that's $100,000 income, which is enough generally to support, an artist. And that's the basics. There's all kinds of variables in there, but that's kind of the basic.
Yeah, that's the core idea. And that was bumping up against like the general wisdom at the time was, you want to be, you want to be a musician or a graphic novelist or children's book illustrator. If you, the only way you're going to make this is you got to have 1 million fans. They all got to love your stuff, and you got to fill a stadium and all that stuff. And he said, no, really the minimum viable, what's the minimum viable audience that you need? And he says, if you can create in a year's time $100 worth of value and you can get 1,000 people to do it, bam, you're making a really substantial living, right? Mm-hmm. And then you could do the math on that. Like Will was saying, the variables, say you do 200 and you have 500 fans, $200 worth of stuff, and you have 500 fans. It's the same thing. Or maybe you've got 2,000 fans, you could extrapolate. And so my question here to you guys is, that came out in 2008 and it sort of was amplified and really trended in 2009. I think 2009 and 10 is when I kind of bumped into it and was like, yeah, this is really cool. I like this idea. Is it still applicable today, 14 years later in 2022 at the time of recording of this?
I don't think it was applicable then.
What?
All right.
Sometimes we argue and sometimes we disagree.
Jake said that this was going to be a saucy episode, so I'm diving right in. It's full of crap.
Because I want to know, is this a reality or is it a myth?
It's a myth.
We drew straws at the beginning of this, and Lee got the short straw, so he has to represent the dumbest opinion on this. So go ahead.
Until I explain myself, and then I'm the smart guy in the room.
Okay, explain it. Why is it a myth?
Everything is a numbers game, and I'll give you the premise of that and then an example of it. To get I agree with the premise that yes, the math is correct. You get 1,000 people to buy something at $100, you got $100,000. Nobody's going to argue that point.
Yeah, easy peasy.
Right?
Just go get those 1,000 fans.
All right, so you're right about that. It oversimplifies how a buying audience works. Mm-hmm. When I go to art fairs, as I gained experience in that area, I realized the number one criteria for how I was going to do at a show is what is the gross number of people that is coming through there, because my buying percentage of people of the general audience is typically the same. So say I sell to 3% of all the people that come through there. If 100,000 people come through there, I made a lot more than if 100 people came through there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same way with fans. You got, I mean, again, the math is correct. 1,000 super fans, and it's a done deal. But I think it's the big audience. Like as I do this tarot deck, I'm partnered with somebody who has 1 million followers on Instagram. I'm not going to have 1 million. I mean, obviously, we're not assuming that all of them are super fans, but it takes the big number to get the small number.
Mm-hmm.
That's my premise.
Okay, but I think you're conflating things with this whole thing. So what he's talking about, so Lee, here's the thing. You have several businesses, really, right? You have your print business, but you also have your show business, and then you have, like, when I talk about shows, I'm saying like your fine art shows.
No business like show business like no business.
I knew somebody
know.
was going to sing. I'm glad it was Jake this time instead of me.
And then you have your freelance business. So they're not really, that article's not really talking about you per se. What they're really saying is to the person who is kind of just starting out, it's an encouragement to say that if you want to make something, and maybe you're not going to go for a freelance career, and maybe you're not going to do retail sales, you're just going to make something and release it on your social media platforms and your website, and you're going to make an announcement that over time, if you can cultivate an audience, that eventually when you get to 1,000, it's kind of a number to shoot for, that will sustain you. Now you do way better than that because you've got these other channels, but it's not saying like you'll have 1,000 people come through the door at a show. It's 1,000 people that follow you.
Right, but you still need, the 1,000 people aren't going to be buyers. What he's assuming is your 1,000 dedicated super fans are 1,000 buyers, but I think you need, that number is tenfold to get the 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any circumstance
absolutely.
So it's a little bit it's oversimplifying.
But he talks about that in
the
there.
buying process.
He says basically, if I remember, and it's been a long time since I read that article, but doesn't he talk about the fact that you need to expose yourself to like 100,000 people over time?
You should never expose yourself to anybody, Will.
Oh man. Dad joke time.
Maybe you'll have, maybe you have 100,000 people that have seen your work. Right. And most of them are never going to spend a dime on your work. And then maybe you have 10,000 people who have bought your work, but they're not going to buy all your work. What he's talking about is 1,000 people that can't wait for your next thing to come out because they're waiting for it to buy it. And they'll be mad at you if it's delayed. Because they've got their money and they're ready.
He just wants that, again, it's the easy sell. The opposite of that is but equals the same result is just get 1 million people interested in your work. And then as a byproduct, there will be 1,000 super fans.
I think
but saying
I
1 million
think you guys
doesn't work.
Kind of saying the same thing. Essentially if you've figured out how to get 1,000 true fans, you also have 10,000 semi-interested fans and 1 million or 100,000 passive fans.
Yeah,
right?
lurkers.
So the question, so the reality is if you have that 1,000 true fans, you're doing really good. You're doing something right. Mm-hmm. And so the question is how do you get there? And I had a friend contact me. He's a fellow illustrator, and he called me up this last week, and he just wanted to know, is it possible for an illustrator to make $100,000 a year? And I bring that up now. And so we broke it down. I asked him what he's doing, how much he's making, how much time he spends, where he's sort of neglecting, where there's like ways to make money. And so that's the question I asked you guys, because this is sort of wrapped up in this, and we're, this is a podcast for illustrators. We're saying you want to make that magical 6-figure income. And for me personally, like $100,000 is great. I would not, turn up my nose to making that much money a year. But my goal, and I heard, this is something that I've always thought, but I never heard it put this way. until I watched a video by The Spirited Man. I think it was his video 2 weeks ago. Anyways, he said the goal has always been for me to make successful dentist money. Okay. not mediocre dentist, but like successful dentist money.
A good dentist.
And the way he describes it is a successful dentist is, this is a person who doesn't have to worry about next paycheck. They're not living bill to bill. They can go on a couple of nice vacations a year. They could spend some extra money on a few nice things. They've got a house. Maybe the house is paid off now, or it's on its way to being paid off. They got retirement, and maybe they even have, some sort of vacation place that they can go to, whether it's a property they own or it's some place that they just have a budget to be able to go to this place, right? That to me sounds absolutely incredible, right? And so the goal for that is, that's probably not $100,000 a year. That's more like 300,000, 400,000, something like that, right? So the question is, can an illustrator even do that? What do you get? Is that possible for an illustrator to do that?
To make that base level?
Let's start with 100,000 a year. And my guess is that if you could do 100,000, what do you need to do? Is what you're doing to get 100,000 going to get you to $500,000 a year?
And that's all freelance, right?
I don't know. Let's define what's an illustrator.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, that's sketchy, but
what does it look? How does an illustrator make 100,000 a year?
Well, I've made more than that in just doing freelance, so it is it is possible. I think it's harder today than it was when I did it, and I did it multiple times, many years in a row. But I think it's a lot easier to make that kind of money doing different things now, including freelance.
So you're saying if in order for an illustrator to make that amount of money, there's going to be, it's not doing one thing, it's having a few different revenue streams.
Right, because and you guys are smart about doing this. It's leveraging the work that you're doing to get to squeeze more money out of it. So like one of the things that you've said, and I think you put a video out on this, Jake, on your YouTube channel, is making sure that you have at least 3 lives for each piece of art you create, right? And Lee, one of the ways you do that is you pick some of your illustrations that you've done digitally, and then you repaint them traditionally, because traditional has such a higher value in an fine art setting. And you can, without having to do, because the hard part is coming up with a concept and designing. And if you can follow your own map and just paint by numbers, essentially,
right,
and generate, how much you sell an original for?
Yeah, I mean, you have my eyes opened to this concept was when you really try to find the true value of something. In other words, what's the max potential of something, not just how much you can get for it once, but over time, like Will's talking about here. But when I realized that a painting, I do an illustration or a painting, whatever you want to call it, the original has a value of X dollars, let's say $2,000, just to put a number on it. And then that's just one sale though. And then I did a limited edition numbered prints. So 250 prints at a certain size equals, so let's say it's $50 a piece times 250. Well, I'm going to pull out my calculator just so I can tell you what that is. 250 times 50. Okay, so now the print run, if I sell through that edition, is made $12,500. So I've got the original, I've got the print run, and then I've also got 14,000. And then I've got the sort of the variable at the end is what else can I do with it? And so I start thinking about licensing it. And I've done that license. Oh, here's some greeting cards with the same image. So the same image is just doing it's just doing a ton of heavy lifting after my part of it is done. And then you multiply that by 100 images. or 200 images or however many images you make, it starts going up, 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 up. And that's kind of why I was doing the tarot deck. The tarot deck is just the very start of that sales cycle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's the Kickstarter is just the start of that sales cycle. Then there's the stores that it might carry it, different shops or whatever. And then there's the individual images. And I tried to not make them so specific that I can use them for other things, including print sales and calendar sales and other licensing things like that. So, you just do a one and done. And I find a lot of students do that. Here's my piece. Oh, I think it's a great illustration. I'll put it on Instagram. And now I'm going to do another piece instead of saying, okay, where can this thing go? Mm-hmm. Can it be a cover for a magazine? I mean, and I've done that a ton. Make an image for myself, sell the original, sell the prints. And then I contact some magazine and say, hey, this would make a great cover for you.
Mm-hmm. And they're like, hey, you're right. It would. Yeah,
it solves all their problem. It's a win-win for everybody. They don't have to wonder if you're going to pull it off. It's already done. They basically just checked off a big to-do on their list. Mm-hmm. So you made their life easier. And so you do that enough times and you start to realize the value of a product. It's not just that you can sell a product. It's how you sell it and where you sell it and in what form do you sell. And we've gone through different versions of that with our school. We have a subscription model of purchasing classes. We have an individual class that we built last year that's an a la carte individual sale class. And there's just all these different ways. I don't see somebody just waiting by the phone and getting calls to do illustration that is going to make any kind of money, real money.
Mm-hmm. So the six-figure illustrator who just goes into their studio 9 to 5 every day, just works on whatever assignment their agent gives them. How is that a reality?
It's not. That's a $35K best case scenario income, in my opinion, around.
For some people, but some people do really well still with freelance. They do a lot better than that.
I think that would be the exception. I'm not saying no one does that.
Mm-hmm. What about your A-list children's book illustrators?
They're up there, but even them, I mean, you're talking, I guess there's tiers of it. There's the Caldecott guys. They have no problem. They're not worried about this.
Right.
But even the people directly under them are still visiting schools. That's their secondary income. I don't see anybody just doing illustration anymore.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's distill this myth that if you want to be, if you want to essentially support more than one person on an illustration career, you're going to have multiple revenue streams than just getting freelance work, right? You got to be a little bit more savvy. And what's interesting about this is maybe that's all people want. Like maybe my spouse works. And so, and I just want to be able to, with my artistic abilities, cover the mortgage payment every year so that we don't have to worry about that. Or just my stuff is going to go into our retirement fund, something like that. And that's completely legitimate and that's great. However, I do feel like if you sat down and did that for 10 years, you just every day showed up and created good work for 10 years, like eventually, year 5, year 6, year 7, year 8, year 9, 10, that last half of that, there'd be, if your work is improving and getting recognition, I could see you making way more money than starting out, doing the 35K a year or 40K a year. A children's book, if it's coming back to your children's books are going to second print, or you paid out your royalties, or you paid out your advance and now getting royalties. Editors will look at that. Future publishers will look at that and say, okay, you're asking for $40,000 for this advance on a book. The numbers add up. We could pay you that, and then you could spend, a year working on that book and make more than you did last year doing 2 books or something. So I think there's ability there. So let's take it to the next level. What are the what are the actionable items for an illustrator to be able to get to that six-figure a year job, payment, I guess, revenue, right? What does that look? Let's break that down. What does that look like?
I feel like we're getting off the weeds by talking about freelance, whereas the 1,000 True Fans is more, talking about the art side and developing a product.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's because our audience is illustrators, we incorporate both usually, right? Like we incorporate just about every illustrator is at least doing some freelance along with nurturing some sort of an audience where they're going to release products online. My first actionable item, I think, since you want to go down that road, is to forget about the 1,000 fans. It's like it's good information to know about it and to go, all I really need is 1,000 people that really, really want my stuff. And I'm trying to get there one day, because it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
But the best thing that any artist can do is to not try to satisfy the masses, because you can't, right? And one of those articles that you sent over, they were talking about how you can't be Oprah anymore. There's no way to be that popular, because back when Oprah became popular, there was network TV and that was it. Right. And so now that with all the different podcasts and all the different YouTube channels and all the different cable channels and satellite channels and everything all bombarding and trying to get our time, what you really can focus in on is the thing that you want to do, the thing that you love to do. And that's my first actionable item is, man, you've got to ask yourself what you really want to do. And you've got to set a goal of 5 years, a decade of doing one thing and doing it really well and doing it better than other people.
And doing it when it seems like nobody's paying attention and nobody believes in it.
Right.
I don't know how many times where I've seen success and where I wish I had done this myself, where there's a person who just has this backlog of every day showing up to do this one thing. And then pretty soon it's like, that's the thing that gains popularity because they figured out how to do it well because they've spent so much time doing it. And then, markets always change, interests always change, and things circle around, and I could point to, the number one podcast in the world right now didn't start out being, Joe Rogan didn't start out trying to be the number one podcast. He just, I don't think he even wants to be it now. Whatever your opinion on him, you can't deny that the guy just showed up every day, put out a few podcasts every week, and did it when it wasn't popular, but still made it interesting and got the people
isn't
on
that
there.
The old saying though is like the overnight success is 10 years in the making.
Yeah,
exactly.
That kind of thing.
Exactly.
Another one that I got to give you this example is that guy that does the YouTube channel Primitive Technology.
Yeah. That's another great one.
So he's got 10 million subscribers. And you can do some calculations on what 1 million subscribers is worth if your channel is not controversial and you can monetize it. And his is he doesn't even talk. It's so it's good for all languages because he's showing. If you guys ever if you haven't seen it, check it out. But one of the coolest things to me about this artist is, so he makes structures and he uses primitive technology. Like one of the things he makes is a forge blower out of clay, and actually, I guess he makes metal out of whatever minerals he found in the dirt.
Ore, right?
Yeah, he finds some kind of ore and actually smelts it.
Yeah.
With nothing more than fire and
his
and the
hands,
stuff
some
he's
sticks
found,
and rocks,
and the clay, yeah. And the thing that I love about his channel is he hardly ever releases a video, but when he does, oh boy! And if you read the comments on his latest videos when he released one, all the comments is, yes, I can't believe you released another video. Like I've been waiting so long for this. I can't wait to watch it. And that's, I mean, he is doing exactly that.
And he's spawned all these these wannabe YouTube channels as well.
And they don't do it as well. They, yeah. So he,
that's the thing too, is I remember when his channel was like new-ish, I remember I found it on his like 5th video he ever posted. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Subscribe, I'll watch it. And then I stopped. I didn't watch it for like a couple years for whatever, you get busy with stuff, and he uploads so infrequently. So I'm definitely not like a warm fan of his. But recently I was like, oh, I wonder how that guy's doing. So I went and looked, he's got 100 some odd videos now, 10 million subscribers. And I'm like, geez, he just kept showing up and he kept making cool stuff and putting it out there. So yeah, I think your action item is my number one, is my action item number one. And that's find your niche, find your market, find that thing that interests you, find out whatever your message is, and just zero in on that and do that thing. I wouldn't try to be the person that does 5 things. And that's one of our like common critiques of people's websites when we look at them is you got a person who does 500 different art styles and I'm going to do your architecture design, and I'm going to design a logo, and I'm going to do caricatures for you,
I loved looking at other businesses for analogies for how we should work. It's sometimes easier to see it in other places. We've talked about sports and stuff before, but I remember, what's the name of that? Not Hell's Kitchen with Gordon Ramsay, where it's the competition, but it's the one where is it Kitchen Nightmares or something, where he goes into restaurants, failing
Death
restaurants
Kitchen.
and fixes them. Okay. So one of the things that we noticed, like this common denominator of these failing restaurants, was he would go in there and it was exactly like what Jake was saying, that you open the menu, you can't tell what kind of restaurant it even is.
They're trying to serve every single
everything.
thing.
So not only is it confusing for the customer, but the restaurant itself had to have every one of those ingredients on hand.
Yeah.
It's very expensive. And they had to train people to cook every single thing on the menu, and it became crazy. So his fix was always just dump that menu, figure out what kind of restaurant you are, and then have like 6 very, very good items on there. And it was just funny how consistent that was. If you just watch one of them, that's all of them, because it's the same fix every time.
Does In-N-Out Burger care that you want a chicken sandwich?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And it's such a great way to look at our business too. Instead of being a graphic designer and a modeler and an illustrator and doing all this stuff, being really specific. And then the next thing is what is if you're using that same analogy, what are the dishes you're going to make? How are you making it interesting for the audience that you choose? So it can't just be, there's 2 sides to the coin, right? It can't just be fully indulgent. I'm going to make this thing, and it can't be in a vacuum, because you have to understand who is the ideal person who would become a super fan.
Right.
And so to use my tarot deck, for example, it is not for everyone. It is, and I know that going in, it is for, but we're entering that age, in my opinion, of super collectors and people who are just, who are, very passionate collectors about one thing. And they will buy all of them, like Star Wars figures or something like that. Well, the tarot community is part of that collector group. They like to have it's not just a functional thing like, oh, nope, I don't need that deck because I already have a deck. It's, I want this one and that one and that one. So you have to understand who your audience is and be okay with it not being a broader audience, but you do need to understand who the buyer is of the thing you're making too. It's a combination.
Right.
And one of my things is why you have to know why they're going to buy your thing. Like Jake, why do you like to watch primitive technology? What does it satisfy? Can you identify it?
There's 2 reasons number one is it's completely relaxing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so peaceful because it's nature sounds, but then you're watching a person make things. And number two, super fascinating. I used to like go out in the woods as a kid and build forts and sharpen sticks and try to hunt for things and cook crawdads and stuff like that. And so there's that part of me that's like, I want to know how to do this stuff. A, because it's interesting and fun, but B, hey, I might need to use it at some point when civilization completely collapses.
And for me, I know he's going to show me something that I haven't seen before, and that's a huge payoff. And so, like what you were saying, Lee, you can't be predictable. You can't afford to make something that someone has already seen a million times before. You have to be offering something new and refreshing.
Or
I'm going to criticize. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, or delivering something not necessarily that they've seen before, but something that definitely scratches an itch. So it's like, people love another like niche fan thing is like Godzilla or big monster movies, right? And if you came along with a comic or a property or something that was your version of Godzilla, those people would probably be interested in it. There's a segment of that population that would be like, oh yeah, let's try this out. Let's try that. Let's see what this is. So again, something different that that respects and is, that serves a very niche audience, right?
Right.
So what were you going to say, Lee?
I was going to say, it's going to sound kind of insulting, but I think a lot of, we're in a field where we can make anything. We can make any image that we're not limited. Like a photographer is limited to the real world. I mean, not saying that with Photoshop, it's made it a lot easier, of course, to make surreal images and stuff like that. We can draw anything.
I feel like I'm watching Captain Kangaroo here. You had a puppy earlier. You had a cat on your lap just now.
Where's the parrot?
Yeah, some bird's gonna land on your head.
It's weird because teaching art for so long and seeing so many images with Critique Arena and people that send images our way. Illustrators, by and large, God, I'm even scared to say this out loud because I'm going to get so much.
I gotta hear this. Can't wait
boring.
to see.
Illustrators are boring. They're cliche. I think a lot of times it's the rare student that submits an image to me where I say, dude, this is too creative. You need to dial it back because this is going wacky. And most of the time it's, for example,
you can always push it.
Yeah, you can always dial something back. But the majority of time we're saying, hey, this is a blue sky assignment, meaning if you're locked into parameters and it's client-based, that's a whole different issue. And you have to respect that, where they're over art directing. But man, when we do a contest, like next month's contest at SVSLearn is the keyword is luck. And as we were critiquing the last month's entries, the last thing I said, if you remember, was do not do a 4-leaf clover because I do not want to see 60 versions of a 4-leaf clover. If you include a 4-leaf clover, it better be some take that, I did not see coming. The bar is very high. Right. The bar is really high for that 4-leaf clover.
So much you could do with luck, but yet I guarantee it's going to be like, there's going to be something with rabbit's foot. There's going to be something with the 4-leaf clover.
Top card solutions. And a lot of illustrators think that technique will save the day. I do a 4-leaf clover, but it's the best 4-leaf clover you've seen drawn.
Look at that lighting.
Right. And it's just weird because we've got the ability to swing for the fences every time when it's personal work that you're making for a portfolio or something like that. And we just don't see that pushed that far. And I just want to challenge you guys to answer the question, why is the thing you're making interesting? Have I seen it before? Yeah. Has somebody already done it better? How can I make my mark here? How am I going to make my individual take on this? And a lot of times it means throwing away the first 10 ideas you had and going with another. It doesn't mean that you have to do that every time. Sometimes it's the first one, but you just got to have options and be critical of yourself. If I do a rabbit, somebody just holding a rabbit's foot, or like they're holding a rabbit's foot, but they're getting ready to step in a hole. Come on, you just have to go far and make an interesting image. You have to go farther.
One of my favorite comic artists is Mike Mignola, creator of Hellboy. And when Hellboy came out in 1993, do you know what was absolutely destroying the comic book market at that time? Image Comics, right? Mm-hmm. So all these guys left Marvel and they went and made their version of X-Men, their version of Spider-Man. It was all superhero team stuff, flashy, lots of lines. It was the Rob Liefelds, the Jim Lees, the Eric Larsons, all these guys, Todd McFarlane's. And here's Mike Mignola, and he's like, well, I'm going to do my own comic, and it's going to be about monsters and like this devil guy that and lots of shadows and not detailed, flashy artwork. And it wasn't him being contrarian, like, well, everybody's doing that, so I'm going to do something different. It was him being, I'm going to draw the thing that I really like to draw, and I'm really good at drawing. So he liked it, and he was good at it. And he drew Hellboy, and, the rest is history. Hellboy's been going on for 30 years now, almost. And a huge success, 3 movies, board games, video games, all kinds of merch, tons of stories, tons of spin-off things. And it's all because he nailed it, he nailed an idea that was true to him. So the question there, the bigger thing too, is if you can't think of anything new and original, you gotta really look at yourself and be like, what am I consuming, and what am I doing, and how am I living my life that is exposing me and helping me to think outside the box? Mm-hmm. And it might be that there needs to be some very core foundational stuff that needs to change in your life so that you can think outside the box. You can be a little bit more creative. So this is really high level stuff that we're talking about now. But let's say you've created something, you've got something really cool. What's next? What's the next thing you do to make $100,000 a year as an illustrator?
Well,
you're starting from scratch. We're assuming that somebody doesn't have 1 million followers at this point. They're sitting there,
or maybe they have, 20,000 followers on Instagram at this point, but they're just not getting traction.
I feel like there's a right or wrong answer that you have. So why don't you just
I'm just curious. Yeah. I mean, I know what my next actionable item is. I'm just curious.
I feel like this is a trap.
I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you what
I think you got to monetize something. You have to figure out then what's the product that you are going to sell that's an interesting product for this base that you've established. So you've established 2 extremely positive things. You have a niche thing that you're really good at. You've identified a buyer who is passionate about that niche. And now you just have to connect the 2, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So my actionable item thing there is building a community around it. Mm-hmm. And this is not just using, these platforms that are provided, Facebook groups or Instagram or anything like that. But it's how do you gather these people together in one place so they know that they know that there's a group of people who's kind of interested in this thing. And I'm not sure how you do that. How do you do that?
Well, there's a lot of ways. You can volunteer to your services to speak on the thing that you're doing at conventions. And so the reason that I'm thinking about that right now is I'm looking at Brandon Sanderson's surprise 4 secret novels Kickstarter, which has 28 hours to go, and I think we'll hit 40 million before it ends. He's gotten $500,000 since I woke up this morning, and wow. And one of the things that he did early on was give talks at comic conventions. So he contacted the organizers, and he's participated in writers groups. He's volunteered and taught at LTUE, and a lot of the stuff that he did in the beginning, he was just so passionate about it. He wanted to share what he was learning, share what he was writing, share what he was all about, and he developed this kind of groupie following of fellow writers who wanted to kind of follow along with him. If you get really good at something, people want to know how to do the thing you're doing. So teaching becomes a natural fit, and students love to follow where their teachers are going, and what kinds of things they're working on. So a lot of successful artists are also teachers. So to me, that's like a no-brainer to start sharing what you're doing with your audience, and maybe even holding some free classes on what you're doing. Have some Zoom sessions. I will say
all of it takes time. And that's, should be assumed with all this stuff. I mean, even our school, how long have we been doing our school now? 8 years?
Mm-hmm. We're close to 10, I would say. I mean,
it's a long time.
From the first class that dropped.
Yeah. And it starts out small, kind of like you were saying about Joe Rogan's podcast. Probably wasn't intentionally, I'm going to make the number one thing ever. It was, for us, it was, hey, we need a Photoshop class. We haven't done this. Let's do a class. And it was just so informal and piecemealing it together. We didn't have any employees. It was just us three chatting together and having fun and figuring out like, hey, this class would probably be a good one. And then that's how we started populating and then we were like, had enough to be a school. And then we had too much stuff to do. We needed to hire some people. And now we've got, 7 people, and we're still just I feel like in the beginning, middle stages. So it's such a slow build with intentional small steps, know?
Yeah. I think too, the community thing is like, if you're going to use social media, then you need to communicate with people, especially early on an individual basis, respond to comments, respond to direct messages, hold contests where you're able to like showcase people in the communities, in your communities, like work, maybe it's a fan art thing or draw this in your style or something like that. But I think too, there's things like Facebook groups or Discord where you can have people interacting and talking to each other who are all interested in the same thing and have maybe like an open back and forth, like, oh, the group, all 10 of you or all 100 of you wanted me to draw this or wanted me to add this to my thing. So now it's added, just so that they see that there is like a community there. Because if you're going to get those 1,000 true fans or those 10,000 half true fans or those 100,000 mild fans, they need to know that you're listening to them and that there is sort of back and forth going on there. I think too, like, you could do a Patreon, you could do a Kickstarter. Some of these crowdfunding things are a way to show that there's other people interested in the thing that you're doing as well.
Can we talk a little bit about Patreon? I mean, it seems like a natural fit sort of for this new model of income, but I think there's sort of two models that I'm seeing now. And one is the desperate artist version, which is, oh my gosh, there's this platform where people will pay me so I don't have to work. And then they're like, right. And then there's this other model, which doesn't fulfill a need for an audience. So those people end up not getting anything. And then there's this other side, which is sort of what you're talking about now. That's like, how can I give my students or people who like the work that I'm doing, how can I give them something that will benefit them or that they are craving in some way? And so one is a service-based one, and one is a sort of handout-based one. And so I think it's important to kind of dissect that Patreon. And correct me if I'm wrong, because you have a Patreon, I don't. Yeah. But I'm just now starting to research that stuff. But you can't just hope that people will just give you money because you don't like to have to make money on your own. And this is sort of a freebie.
Right. No, and the Patreon has ebbed and flowed over the years, but it's always been around support either the project that I'm working on or just me as a creator. And right now it's really focused on support me as a creator. I'm going to be working on 100 different projects, over the course of a year, and you're just along for the ride. And, you get to essentially, I'm sharing things on there that I'm not sharing on social media, that I'm not sharing in my newsletter. and it's very much a behind the scenes look at how an artist, an illustrator is working. And there's people there who want to do what I'm doing. There's people that don't want to do what I'm doing, but are interested and want to support it. And so for me, I want to do like this next part here. I want to break down like what $100,000 actually looks like. So I want to say, for an illustrator, go get that children's book deal. That's going to be a $20,000 or a $25,000 advance, on the low end of $15,000 advance, right? So there you've got how much you've got towards your 6-figure goal. You're a quarter of the way there. We'll just say you've got some talent, some ability. You've got a good agent, and you're able to get to that $20,000 advance level. Okay. So how do they fill the gap? How do they fill the $80,000? Launch a Kickstarter. Okay. How much could a person with, say, 20,000 Instagram followers make on a Kickstarter if they did like a sketchbook, an art book, or something like that?
25 to 30?
Yeah, 25 to 30. All right. So now we're at 50,000. Okay. So how do we close that $50,000 gap? Let's say they do a Patreon and they're able to convert 2% of online followers to support a Patreon. So what's 2% of 20,000? It's like 400.
400.
Yeah. Okay. 400 at $5, at $5 a month. So what's that? That's $2,000, right? Mm-hmm. 2,000 times 12 is what? 24. So now we're at around 75,000. How do they close that $25,000 gap? Online shop. You put out a print every month. You got your book that you kickstarted in your shop. So you're selling people who showed up late to the Kickstarter. You also got all the add-ons to the book. So you've got stickers and some pins and some, sticker set, a pin set, some prints related to it. Maybe there's digital downloads. So you'll do the artist edition of your book that you did or something like that. And I think your shop, if you're talking about it weekly, so if weekly you're talking about join my Patreon, buy something from the shop, my upcoming Kickstarter, sign up here for that, then I think you could probably close that gap and make that 6 figures. And then this is all exponential. If you're able to figure out how to get 40,000 followers online or 500,000 followers online, and you can convert those people to these different avenues, you're gonna easily hit that 100,000 a week, or 100,000 a week. That'd be nice.
Well, or you back off the
mark.
need, depending on what, if it's 100,000, I want to make 100,000 a year in 5 years time, then you only have to start, maybe this first year, all I need is 30. And then next year I'll make 45. And then, go up 15K each year, which is a very reasonable amount to go up. That might be the way to do it instead of trying to go for the straight hundo. Right.
Another way that I think would be attractive to a lot of people is really working towards being able to bring one big project to a crowdfunding campaign. Some illustrators or artists don't want to do illustration necessarily. Maybe they were trained in illustration, but they really want to sink their teeth into doing personal projects. Mm-hmm. And my suggestion there would be to start small on Kickstarter, or Indiegogo, one of those crowdfunding platforms, and start to develop a following. And the neat thing about that is each time you can build on it and you can go back to that same audience and grow that same audience. There's a way to go and look at, like, if you look at publishing or if you look at illustration and you sort by most funded, you can see a list of the most funded projects. And one of the best ways to figure out this Kickstarter thing is to go and dissect other projects and ask yourself, like, why did people support these so much? Some of the artists were famous ahead of time, so they were able to bring their followings, basically through an announcement on social media. But some of them weren't as popular. There's one here by Pong. I think I'm saying the word right. Puung. And this project is called Pong's Illustration of Love. It was done back in 2016, but it did raise $126,000. And it wasn't published by a publisher like 3D. What's that one that's like 3D Total Publishing? Be careful of looking at those projects. They're, some artists have been really successful, but they're powered by 3D Total Publishing, and I'm not sure what their percentage is. Not that they're not successful, not that they're not great, but they're not doing it on their own, and they're not going to get all that money. But if you look at like the project I'm talking about, she has a very distinct thing that she wants to do. She wants to illustrate scenes of a couple in love and doing things that couples do when they're in love. And that's it. It's that simple. And obviously, a lot of people wanted to hang these on their wall or get the book, or she offers all kinds of different ways to consume her art. But man, it's to me, it's like one of the most perfect Kickstarters, and a perfect example of the 1,000 true fans. And she could take this, she could take that and leverage it into more and more projects if she wanted to. So that's just something to think about.
Yeah.
So
I want to ask you guys, give me your honest, what you think, how many true fans you each have.
Oof.
True fans, meaning a buying fan, somebody who, if you offer something, will convert.
Like who will spend $100 on you a year.
I have no idea.
Man, let me answer that question in about 2 weeks, because I'll know.
After the Kickstarter.
It could be low. It could be. I have no idea. I mean, you have an idea, but the in practice, who knows?
Yeah, I have no idea.
If I were to put it to me, I would think if I launch a Kickstarter, based on past Kickstarters, I'm in the 1,200 to 2,000 backer range. I've had one Kickstarter that started, it was 2,000, and on the low end, just over 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a Kickstarter. But patrons right now, I only have 127 patrons, right? I consider those guys true fans, for sure. So I want to say Jake Parker true fans are in the 150 range. Maybe you're not a patron supporter, but you will absolutely buy whatever brand new I put in the shop. And then I would say 2,000 range is going to be the past semi interested fans. Like, oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I don't have to get everything, but I'll back this Kickstarter. I won't back it at the higher level. I'll back it at the base level, right? And then passive fans, 100,000, 200,000, something like that.
So let me say this: I don't think the three of us really qualify to truly be tested by this 1,000 true fans principle. And the reason why is because what we do is with our time is so fractured that we're not focusing on one thing. And I think that this is really speaking towards the person who, he was really talking about a band at first. That's like the original idea of this is a band needs 1,000 true fans to buy their CDs. That's why we're trying
to figure out how does it apply to illustrators,
right? And so I think it applies to the person who's doing the same project basically, or the same type of project, like comics. An artist that is just releasing comics. And when they finish one comic, they start working on the next one, or graphic novels or something like that. and they're not doing anything else, those guys are going to know about how many true fans they have, because every time they release one. Travis Hansen, who we're supposed to be interviewing on this podcast, I think he's a good example of 1,000 true fans. We should talk to him about it when we end up.
He needs to respond to my email first.
I think figuring out how many fans you need originally is going to be kind of essential too. Like for my Kickstarter, my minimum viable amount of what would be a true fan, somebody who invests in this project, 225. That's what I need. To make for the Kickstarter to go, I need 225 people to say yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not even going to go.
Yeah.
So, what is it? And then so that's I don't know if I sent you guys the spreadsheet. Did I send you that spreadsheet for my? So I have a spreadsheet for Kickstarter projections, and it's based on 5 different models of how many people you got. A worst case scenario is the minimum viable thing for it to run. 225 is in my leftmost column. This is the bare minimum, and these people get it, and the project was made. I didn't make anything. It literally just funded the printing. And then I've got a low average, a medium average, a high average, and then just blew the top off. What are those
when
numbers?
you wish upon a star average.
Right. And so I teamed up because I was nervous about how many true fans I partnered with somebody who has many more passive fans and many more true fans than I do. And I'm giving her a percentage just because there is value in this. I mean, you can't underestimate the value in this. That's why we're talking about it. These are people who part with their dollars to get your thing. And so based on her numbers, 9 at the far right side of my spreadsheet is 9,000 purchases. We blew the doors off. We're at the highest, that matched the highest number of sales for a project like this in Kickstarter. Now, anything more than that obviously would be more than welcome. Right. But, just saying, okay, what's the highest average so far based on reality, not
within the realm
world.
of actual possibilities.
Right. And so 225 is minimum, 9,000 is maximum, and you can scale down in the middle. And so hopefully it'll be in the middle, but maybe it won't. I mean, you just never know.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting to go into it with having those kinds of predictions. And when I do a Kickstarter, I don't go 5 different options. I'll just be like, what's based on sales that I've done in the past, what's realistic, and then what's my minimum to go in there. So, all right. I don't know if we sufficiently answered this, but we definitely talked about it for a while. So
we did something. I don't know what we did something.
Yep. Hey, and that's what you get for a free podcast.
I got to say this, the last thing, I cannot hammer this home enough. To be successful as an artist, you cannot think about the money you're going to make.
Right.
No.
You can't worry about it, which is so weird.
Because you have to
have money
to survive.
You have to give your art everything you can give it, almost as if it is bigger than you. It's more important than you, because your fans are more important than you. Your fans are not your fans. They're fans of the thing you make. That's a big distinction. They don't care about you. I mean, they will over time, but they care about the thing that you're making. And think about yourself. There's so many people that will rag on something, and then they'll go make something sloppy themselves. Yeah, it's like.
But you think about your own things that you're fans of. Like, I mean, you are a fan of the person who makes it, but really the thing that touches you, that excites you, that gives you an emotional response to it is the thing they make. So it does come down to that. Like, the Mike Mignola thing, if I was anything less than a true fan, I wouldn't have supported the documentary about Mike Mignola Kickstarter. But because I have every graphic novel, every library edition, even the floppies, versions of everything, then I'm going to show up for that Kickstarter because I want to know about the guy. But I think the long story short of this is if you have 1,000, if you can get that 1,000 true fans, you're doing something right. You're also going to be making way more than $100,000 a year. You know,
let me add something to that too.
1,000 person mark. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I want to add something. This is really important, and it's based on what you just said about Mike Mignola, but I want to make it a little more of a directive for you guys. If you want this in your life and to build a super fan base, think about becoming a super fan. Like what Jake just said is, we live in an era where we want everything for free because you can see it for free. There's the image on Instagram. There's this. Why should I pay for this when I can just see something right there? Or do I become the super fan? If you see somebody who has something that you like, just say, hey, what can I give them? Maybe it's not a ton. Maybe they have a Patreon for $5. Maybe it's the $1 tier on Kickstarter, or you buy a little print from them. But become the fan that you want to have follow you too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Yeah, and just complete the circle, because if everybody starts doing that, it supports people just like us.
You brought up another point too. I wanted to make earlier. I forgot though, but that's the key thing here for all of that is to actually make something substantial, and just posting cool art on Instagram isn't going to cut it. You actually have to make something tangible that has value. And I think there's an artist I wanted to interview for the podcast. When I reached out to him, he's like, no, I don't do interviews anymore. I'm just trying to really focus on making things. I want my work to speak for itself. I don't want to have to essentially speak for it. And this is a guy who does a Kickstarter every year, and it's enormously backed. I don't know if he wants me telling specifically who he is, but they're backed every year by a substantial amount of people, and every year it grows, Mm-hmm. And I looked at his social media accounts. He's not following a ton of people. He follows 1 or 2 people on each account, but yet has thousands and thousands and thousands of followers. But he's constantly uploading stuff that's going to be a part of the thing that he's going to sell. He's not just uploading flavor of the day. Here's what Instagram wants, the algorithm wants me to post. Here's a thing that has value in and of itself, but then is a contribution to something bigger. And that person is a successful illustrator who is, I would say, is a successful dentist. Wealthy, nice. Right? So it's recognizing, the pitfalls of social media, but also the advantage of social media, and making sure that you are making something tangible and of value. And I think if you're able to do that and give yourself that time, and maybe you're working a day job while you're doing this, and maybe you're taking on freelance while you're doing this, but you're giving yourself that time, I think it's achievable. All factors taken in consideration, I think it's achievable. Should we close there?
Definitely. Yep.
Let's wrap it up.
All right. Thank you for joining us today. 3-Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLearn.com, where becoming a great illustrator starts. Your hosts have been Will Terry, Lee White, and I'm Jake Parker. You can find Will Terry's work on his website at willterry.com. You can find Lee White on his work on his website at leewhiteillustration.com. And go over to my website. It's mrjakeparker.com. Podcast produced by Daniel Tu. That's Daniel TU, and you can find his work at daniel2.co. Special thanks to Master of Production David Bro, Keeper of Curriculum Austin Shirtliff, Chief Operations Officer Lisa Fott, and thank you to Lily Howell for our show notes. Now, go draw something.
Jake, time's speeding up the older you get.
Yeah, last year.
You've entered the second half of your life, buddy. How does it feel?
Welcome to it.
I'm not there yet. I'm living to 100, so I still got 5 more years.
I'm pegging you at like 94.
I'll take it.
Okay.
He seems like a 93 to me, but I'll give him the extra year.
I wonder what it is that's going to kill me. If it's going to be my heart.
Would you want to know if you could open a fortune cookie and it would literally tell you the exact thing and time?
If I knew the time, I would absolutely freak out.
Your air scrubber is going to fail on Mars.
If I knew the reason, I probably wouldn't freak out.
I don't know, because like, what if it was some weird thing? Like say it says you're going to get attacked by bees. Then all of a sudden you're looking for that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, hey, you're going to get attacked by bees and you're going to die on this day. And those are the two factors.
Mm-hmm.
And you can only know one. Which is the one you want to know?
Do I go quick?
Timer. I would want to know the method, because if I had those two options, bees and time of death, I would immediately move to Antarctica.
But here's the thing. You can't alter it. There's nothing you can do to alter it.
But wouldn't you try though?
You would.
I mean, there's no way
you would be able to alter it if you knew.
No.
Yeah. Because if
But there would be some weird setting. I mean, it's just like in the movies, right? There'd be some weird setting. There'd be some weird circumstance that would happen that would cause the bees to, like, say I moved to Antarctica, like, okay, I'm safe from the bees here. There's no bees here. And by the way, I'm just assuming there's no bees in Antarctica.
Right.
And then, like, you know, a plane would be going overhead, a box of bees would fall out of it. I would be under it and then get attacked by the bees. And, you know, some
you're in Antarctica at one of those like stations that they have there, because you can only live in one of those stations. And a scientist shows up and he's like, yeah, I'm here to study cold weather on bees, the effects of cold weather.
I would kill that person. The second he said that,
sunlight.
I would kill that person. There's a movie about that, isn't there? That's where people either it's an order of death between a group of friends, or I can't remember how each of them know who's supposed to die, but they don't know how, and they're sort of averting it. Do you know what I'm talking about? It came out in the last couple of years.
No, but I remember there's a movie where you could buy yourself more time, and the rich were able to like buy more time.
I saw that.
I saw that. Interesting.
But they buy it from other people, right?
Right.
Right.
Wait, you buy a couple of years. It takes the years away from somebody else.
So poor people are selling their time.
They sell their time,
and the rich are buying it.
I'll tell you one way that I'm never going to die. I'm never going to die in an industrial dryer.
Oh, that's
because I'll never get in one when I'm doing maintenance work on it and have the door accidentally shut and it auto start.
Okay, it's called Final Destination is the name of that movie, where they have either premonitions or something, and they sort of have clues to how each of them is going to die, and they're trying to avert it.
So, but here's my question. So you have to answer. You have to know one of these things, and your future is not alterable. There's nothing you can do to change it. Do you know? You can't know both. You can only pick one.
Can you pick zero?
Do you know? Do you pick how you die, or do you pick when you die?
I would say when. If I had to know any of that, I would pick when. And the only reason for that is if it was soon, I don't want my kid going to school next week. If say it's in 2 weeks, I shut everything down and just make the best 2 weeks I possibly can. If you can't change the date, truly.
Right.
And if it's a long time away, then I start risking everything I have in extreme sports.
I'm going to choose not to play this game. I don't want to know either one.
I know, but it's this question, answering this question teaches you a little bit about yourself and others about who you are. Are you the type of guy that wants to know how, or are you the type of the guy that wants to know when? Lee's a when guy.
I'd get
you a how guy or a when guy?
I'd get Flashy Thing by Will Smith after being slapped by Will Smith.
You want to know how. You died by Will Smith. I would want to know when. I don't care about how. I would want to know when. Especially if there's nothing you can do to prevent it. Even if you tricked yourself into thinking you could prevent it by, like, you're just going to die of heart disease, in your sleep. So then I spend my life like trying to avoid anything that's going to damage my heart. It's still not going to change it. So I might as well. Then you can live a life of like food decadence. but maybe
which then you caused your own death from knowing it. That is the exact plot of one of the new Twilight Zones.
Oh, really? The Jordan Peele Twilight Zone?
Yeah, it's great storytelling, except for they.
Where do I watch those? I want to see those.
They're on Amazon. But this one was a good
for
one.
Free?
This guy, for free. Amazon for free.
Amazon Prime for free.
This is a great setup. For some of the Twilight Zones are a little bit goofy when they get into aliens and stuff. But
yeah,
this
I
one
even
was
like
a good one.
bad Twilight Zones.
This guy gets on a flight and doesn't have anything to do. Didn't plan, I guess, whatever. But he doesn't have anything to do. So he notices a pair of headphones and like an old iPod in the seat back in front of him. And it's labeled something. I can't remember what it's labeled. But anyway, he decides to put it on and presses play. And it's a documentary style breakdown of an event. Like if we were to watch a documentary of the Hindenburg, say, for example, it's set up like that, except for the content is about the flight that he is on. And so as he can't turn away, he doesn't want to listen to it, but at first he's kind of puzzled by it, but then he starts to notice what it's talking about is happening around him. And so he starts to try to intervene based on what's being said on this podcast. And so he thinks there's a terrorist on board and all this stuff and whatever. Goes through all these steps. I don't want to ruin it for you though, Jake.
Don't ruin it for me.
Dang. Okay. Well, now I can't finish the damn story.
No, I get what's going to happen.
What?
He tries to alter it, but his way of altering it actually fulfills
that's right.
The prophecy or whatever.
Yeah. And it's done well. It's perfect. They actually when you watch it, I want you to pay attention because at the end they had literally the perfect ending if they just stopped. If they just went to black and then they ruined it with like 2 more minutes, all of a sudden the screen comes back on. You're like, why in the world would you turn the screen back on and have an extra 2 minutes? They had the perfect ending.
Sounds like you're going to write Jordan Peele an email.
Oh, I already have. Many. Which email? I send him an email every day, even before this. Anyway, let's go ahead and get going.
Hey, let me share my screen really quick.
Sharon.
Let me hit the button. Multiple participants can share screens.
Sorry, Daniel. We thought we were going to get into this one. Now we're just lollygagging.
What does this image right here and Lee White have to do in common?
I'm a mountain biker.
Does Lee have one of those?
I do not.
I love that you didn't get it right away. I freaking love it.
A lefty. Something with lefty, because that's the fork.
Lefty Ocho?
The lefty Ocho.
What's funny is if
I tried to click that
if
X.
people were watching this, they would get it. And they don't even have to know you that well, Lee.
Mountain biker with one arm? I don't know. Click that X. I can't click it.
Turn your face to the left, Lee.
Oh. Very smooth. If it wasn't mountain biking, I'd probably get it. But then I was starting to look for mountain bike clues because I'm mountain bike.
That's funny.
That's very good. I'm missing the right side of my glasses for those of you guys just listening, or if this is even going to go in. Why would this go in our podcast?
Yeah, but we are on YouTube. We are on YouTube at Society of Visual Storytelling. If you want to check out our YouTube,
let's do it. All right, let's dive in.